I still remember the day they brought me here. It was a bright morning in Sacramento, the kind of day that looks like a painting. The sky was pure blue, the kind of blue that stretches endlessly without a single cloud to interrupt it. The sunlight spilled through my window and danced on the floor. The world looked so alive that morning. Funny, isn't it? How sometimes the most beautiful days can hide the saddest goodbyes. Ethan had told me we were going for a drive. "Just a little trip, Mom," he said, smiling. "There's something I want to show you." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He's my boy, my only child. I trusted him like I always did. The kind of trust that only a mother can hold in her heart. Blind, endless, unshakable. I remember standing in front of the mirror that morning, brushing my gray hair carefully. I put on my favorite blue sweater, the one his father, Tom, had bought me 20 years ago on our anniversary. It was a little worn now, but it still carried his scent, faint and comforting. I smiled at my reflection, not because I looked beautiful, but because I felt happy. My son was taking me out. I thought maybe we were going to the lake, or for pancakes at the cafe by the river, like we used to when he was younger. He used to order chocolate chip pancakes and tell me, "Mom, these are the best in the world." When we got in the car, I could feel the warm air brushing my face as the windows rolled down. Ethan played a soft tune on the radio, something instrumental, the kind of music that fills the silence when no one knows what to say. I talked about the neighbors, about the garden, about the little bird that kept building a nest by the window. He just nodded and said, "That's nice, Mom," every now and then. I thought he was tired. I didn't know he was nervous. When the car stopped, I looked out the window expecting to see a park or a cafe. Instead, I saw a large building surrounded by white fences and flowers. Roses, daisies, and lilies swaying gently in the breeze. There was a sign that said, "Willow Springs Senior," living in gold letters that glimmered under the sun. I stared at it for a moment, confused. "Ethan," I asked softly, "what is this place?" He hesitated. His fingers gripped the steering wheel for a moment. "Mom," he said, it's a nice place. A community for seniors. You'll have company here. Nurses, friends, people to talk to. It's a good place, Mom." I felt a strange chill run through me, even though the day was warm. I asked again, "You mean I'll live here?" He didn't answer right away. He looked down at his phone as if the screen could save him from my question. "Just for a while," he said finally. "Until you're stronger. You've been forgetting things lately. Mom, it's for your safety. For my safety." Those words echoed in my head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. I looked at his face, the same face I had kissed goodnight 1,000 times when he was little. And yet that morning it looked different, older, distant. He didn't mean to hurt me, I know that. But mothers can feel when their children are gently pushing them out of their world. I could feel it in the way he avoided my eyes, in the tremor of his voice, in the silence that filled the car. I nodded slowly. "If you think this is best," I said, "then okay." He looked relieved. Maybe because I didn't cry, maybe because I didn't ask him to take me home. I didn't want to make it harder for him. That's what mothers do. We hold our tears so our children don't have to see them. Inside, the nurse greeted us with a kind smile. She showed us the room. Small, clean, with pale curtains and a soft bed. There was a window overlooking a garden where 2 elderly women were feeding birds. Ethan helped me unpack my small suitcase, a few clothes, my husband's photo, my knitting bag, and a book I never finished reading. When it was time for him to leave, I held his hand. "Will you visit me soon?" I asked. He smiled and said, "Of course, Mom. Every week." He hugged me, quick and gentle, kissed my forehead, and walked away. I stood by the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway. I waited even after it was gone, staring at the empty road as if it might suddenly bring him back. That's when it truly sank in. I wasn't going home. The first few nights were the hardest. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The sheets smelled like bleach instead of lavender, and the air felt heavy. Every little sound, a door closing, footsteps in the hallway, someone coughing, made me flinch. I missed the sounds of my home, the creak of the floor outside Ethan's room, the hum of the refrigerator late at night, the way the clock ticked softly in the kitchen. Here, silence was loud. It pressed against me like a weight I couldn't lift. The nurses were kind, but their kindness felt practiced. Smiles that never reached their eyes. Voices that sounded the same for everyone. At night, I would whisper my husband's name. "Tom," I'd say, staring at the ceiling. "They left me here, but I'm okay. I won't cry." Sometimes I lied. I cried quietly into the pillow, so no one would hear. A few days later, Ethan visited. He brought flowers, daisies my favorite. Emma came running in behind him, her little arms flinging around my waist. "Grandma!" she shouted, her face lighting up. For a moment, everything felt right again. We sat in the garden, ate cake, laughed, and talked about her school. I told her stories about her father when he was her age, how he once climbed the neighbor's fence to rescue a kitten and ended up getting chased by a rooster. She laughed so hard she spilled her juice. Ethan smiled, but I noticed the tiredness in his eyes. When he left that day, he hugged me and said, "Next Sunday, Mom, same time." And he did come, for a while. But life moves fast when you're young. Soon the visits became shorter, then less frequent. He'd call sometimes and say, "Sorry, Mom, work's been crazy," or "Emma's got school projects." I understood. I always understood. That's what mothers do. We forgive before they even ask. Still, every Sunday at 4 p.m., I'd sit by the window and wait. I'd watch cars enter the parking lot one by one. Sometimes my heart would jump at the sight of a blue car, his car, but then it would pass by and park somewhere else. I'd whisper, "Maybe next week," and hope. Because hope is a mother's heartbeat. My roommate Helen was 75. She had arthritis and a laugh that sounded like a rusty bell. She'd tell me, "You'll get used to it here." We all do, but I never did. You can get used to pain, to hunger, even to loneliness. But you never get used to being forgotten by the one you love most. The days at Willow Springs began to blend together. Morning sunlight through the thin curtains, the sound of wheels on the hallway floor, nurses greeting us with gentle voices. The smell of oatmeal and disinfectant filled the air. I'd wake up, look at the small photo of Tom on my nightstand, and whisper, "Good morning, love." Another day, routine became my anchor. Breakfast, a short walk in the courtyard, then an hour of knitting or reading, though, truth be told, I often just stared at the same page for minutes, thinking about home. Sometimes, I'd close my eyes and imagine our kitchen, the yellow curtains I loved, the sound of the kettle whistling, the old radio playing country songs while Tom read the newspaper. I missed that life, not because it was grand, but because it was mine. Helen, my roommate, liked to talk. She'd tell me about her son in Texas, how he sent her postcards every month. She'd keep them in a shoebox under her bed. "At least he remembers," she'd say with a small smile. I envied her shoebox. When Ethan's calls started to fade, once a week, then once every 2 weeks, I found myself waiting for something, anything. A call, a message, a familiar knock on the door. When none came, I began to write. Not emails, not texts, real letters, pen and paper, words that felt heavier because they came from my heart. "Dear Ethan," I'd begin, "I hope you're doing well. How's Emma?" I miss her laughter echoing through the house. "I planted some daisies in the courtyard today. They remind me of the ones you used to pick for me from the front yard, even when I told you not to ruin the garden." I'd end each letter with, "Love always, Mom," but I never mailed them. I didn't want him to feel guilty. I just needed to write, to feel like I was still talking to him somehow. I kept every letter in a small wooden box beside my bed, the same box that once held Tom's watch and a few photographs from our early years. Sometimes, in the evenings, the staff would play music in the common room. Old songs, Frank Sinatra, Doris Day, sometimes Elvis. Couples would dance slowly, though most of us just watched. I'd close my eyes and remember my wedding day. The smell of gardenias, the warmth of Tom's hand in mine, the way he whispered, "You look like the sky, Margaret." We danced barefoot that night. Under strings of white lights our friends had hung between the trees. He stepped on my toes twice, and we laughed so hard we forgot the lyrics. Those memories kept me alive in a place that felt like it was built to forget. On my birthday that year, the staff surprised me with a small chocolate cake. They sang "Happy Birthday" in cheerful voices, and I smiled, though my heart was heavy. All through the song, I kept looking toward the door, waiting for Ethan and Emma to walk in with balloons and laughter. They didn't. That evening, the phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice was rushed. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Something came up at work. We'll come next weekend, okay?" I said, "It's all right, sweetheart. I understand." And I did. Or at least, I told myself I did. After the call, I sat on my bed with the leftover cake. The frosting had melted a little, and the sweetness felt dull. I saved a small slice in the fridge, thinking maybe they'd come the next day. They didn't. The cake went stale. Eventually, I threw it away. Nights were the hardest. When the lights dimmed and the hallways fell silent, I'd listen to the ticking of the wall clock and think about time, how it kept moving even when our lives slowed down. I'd lie awake, remembering the nights Ethan used to sneak into my bed when he was afraid of thunderstorms. I'd hold him close and whisper, "It's just thunder, baby. It'll pass." I never thought I'd be the one afraid of the dark someday. A few months later, a new volunteer started coming on weekends, a young woman named Lily. She was kind, always carrying a book or guitar. She said she studied music therapy. Sometimes she'd sit by my bed and play soft tunes while I knitted. One afternoon she asked, "Do you ever miss home?" I smiled sadly. "Every day. But sometimes I think home isn't a place anymore. It's just the people we love." She nodded as if she understood. When she sang, I'd close my eyes and imagine Ethan sitting beside me again, 10 years old, his hands sticky with ice cream. his laughter echoing through the house. That boy was still somewhere inside the man who'd brought me here. I knew that. He wasn't cruel, just lost. The world moves fast for the young, and sometimes they forget that love doesn't. The first winter I spent at Willow Springs was long and cold. The heater hummed, and frost crept up the edges of the window. Helen's arthritis got worse, and she often groaned through the nights. I'd hold her hand until she fell asleep. One morning, she whispered, "You're lucky, Margaret. At least you had a son who loved you once." I smiled faintly. We all get love, Helen. Some of us just get it in pieces. Around Christmas, Ethan finally came. Almost 6 months since his last visit. He looked thinner, older, tired. I could see guilt in his eyes even before he spoke. "Hi, Mom," he said softly, handing me a wrapped box. Inside was a blue scarf. He said Emma picked the color because it matched my sweater. I pressed it to my face. It smelled faintly of home. We talked for a while. He showed me photos of Emma on his phone, her school play, her drawing, her missing front tooth. I smiled and told him how beautiful she looked. Then, as he was leaving, I asked, "Ethan, am I a burden to you?" He froze. "What?" "No, Mom, of course not." "Why would you say that?" I shrugged gently. "Because you look at me like you're sorry for something." He didn't answer. He just hugged me tight and said, "I love you, Mom." And for that moment, I believed every word. After he left, I sat on my bed for a long time, holding the scarf against my chest. I whispered, "He still loves me, Tom. He just doesn't know how to show it anymore." I imagined Tom's voice answering from wherever he was, saying, "He'll learn, Margaret. Give him time." I smiled through tears. "Time," I whispered. "That's all we ever have, and all we ever lose." Spring came again. The courtyard bloomed with tulips and roses. I began to spend my afternoons sitting by the window, watching the wind move through the flowers. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, I'd see shadows of families visiting their loved ones, daughters pushing wheelchairs, grandchildren handing drawings, and I'd imagine Emma among them, running toward me with her bright smile. Even if it was just in my mind, it made my heart lighter. The waiting never ends. The years began to slip quietly through my fingers like sand I couldn't hold anymore. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The seasons changed, and I changed with them. My hair grew thinner, my hands shakier. Sometimes when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. But then I'd smile and whisper, "It's still me, Tom, just a little older." The nurses at Willow Springs had grown used to me by now. They called me Ms Margaret, even though I'd told them a dozen times to just call me Maggie. But I didn't mind. It was nice to be remembered at all. One morning, while I was drinking tea by the window, I noticed the daisies blooming again in the courtyard. I remembered planting them 2 years ago with Lily, the young volunteer. She'd said, "Flowers come back, even when no one believes they will." I smiled at that thought. Ethan hadn't visited in months. His last call was quick, filled with the noise of the city behind him. Car horns, voices, life. "Sorry, Mom," he said. "We'll come next weekend." That was 3 months ago, but I still waited every Sunday at 4 o'clock, like always. I'd sit in the same chair by the window, my blue sweater folded neatly on my lap. I'd watch the parking lot, searching for that familiar blue car, and even when it didn't come, I whispered, "Maybe next week." Hope is a quiet thing. It doesn't shout or beg. It just sits patiently in the heart, waiting. One afternoon, Helen passed away in her sleep. The nurses told me in the morning, and I sat there staring at her empty bed. Her shoebox of postcards was still under it. I asked if I could keep it safe until her son came. They nodded. That night, I opened the box. So many postcards. From Texas, from Florida, from places with beaches and sunsets. Each one started with, "Hi, Mom, thinking of you." I read every single one, and when I was done, I cried, not because Helen was gone, but because someone, somewhere, had loved her enough to write. I wrote Ethan another letter that night. "Dear Ethan, do you remember when you broke your arm at 10? I stayed by your side the whole night. You were so scared of the needle, but I told you it would be okay. And it was, because I was there. Now I'm the one who's scared, and I wish you were here. But even if you can't be, I still love you, just like before. Love, Mom." I placed it in the box with all the others. The following winter was colder than the last. I started feeling tired often, the kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. My chest hurt sometimes, and the nurses said they'd keep an eye on me. I told them not to worry. I wasn't afraid. At night, I'd dream of my old house, the one with the cherry tree outside the window. I could almost smell the blossoms again. I'd see Tom on the porch reading his newspaper, and little Ethan chasing fireflies in the yard. Sometimes I'd wake up with tears on my cheeks, smiling. It's strange how the heart remembers what time tries to erase. One evening, Lily came to visit again. She'd finished college by then, but she still came to play for us sometimes. She sat by my bed and played a soft tune on her guitar. I asked her, "Do you believe people can hear us from the other side?" She smiled gently. "I think love travels everywhere, Ms Margaret, even where we can't see." I nodded. Then I'll keep talking to them, to Tom, to Ethan, to Emma, until they hear me. She squeezed my hand. They already do. A few nights later, I wasn't feeling well. My breathing was heavy, my heart uneven. The nurse helped me lie down and said she'd call the doctor. I whispered, "If my son calls, tell him I love him." She smiled softly. Of course. The room felt dim, the edges of everything softer, like the world was fading into light. I thought I heard music, faint, like a lullaby. Maybe it was Lily's guitar echoing in my memory. Maybe it was just my heart slowing down. And then I saw Tom. He was standing near the window, smiling that same smile he gave me the day we met. "You've waited long enough, Maggie," he said. "It's time to come home." I reached for him, and everything went white. They told me later, or maybe I just imagined it, that Ethan got the call the next morning, that he froze, the phone slipping from his hand, his voice breaking. He came, you know. He came. I saw him. He walked into my empty room, sat on the edge of my bed, and held my letters, all of them. The nurses had placed the wooden box on the table. He opened the first one, read a few lines, and started crying, the way he used to when he was little and scraped his knee. I wanted to touch his hair, to tell him not to cry, that I forgave him long before he asked, but my hands couldn't reach him anymore. Still, I whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart. I'm here." And somehow, I think he felt it. He buried me next to Tom, by the river we used to walk along on summer evenings. He brought white roses, my favorite. I watched him from somewhere beyond the wind. His face was pale, his eyes red. Emma stood beside him, holding his hand. She was taller now, her hair tied in a neat braid. When the priest finished the prayer, Ethan knelt by my grave and whispered, "I'm sorry." "Mom," the wind moved through the trees, and a few petals from the roses drifted toward him. He looked up as if he'd heard something. Maybe he did. Maybe he heard me say, "I forgave you long ago, my love." From wherever I am now, I watch them sometimes. Ethan visits Willow Springs often these days, not as a son, but as a helper. He reads to the residents, brings them food, plants flowers in the garden. He even fixed Helen's old wind chime and hung it near the courtyard gate. Sometimes he brings Emma with him. She paints pictures for the seniors and leaves them on their nightstands. Ethan tells them, "My mother used to live here. She taught me what love really means." And I smile, even though he can't see me, because he finally understands. Last spring, he found the box I'd left for Emma, the one with the little pink sweater I never finished knitting. I'd started it when she was 5, but my hands had grown too weak. I wanted her to have it someday. Unfinished, but made with love. When Ethan gave it to her, she asked, "Grandma made this for me?" He nodded, his voice breaking. Now she keeps it on her chair, says it smells like lavender. Maybe it does. I used to spray my clothes with lavender water every Sunday morning. Children remember love, you see, even when it's quiet, even when it's gone. Sometimes, when the sun sets over Sacramento, I see Ethan sitting on his porch, a cup of coffee in his hand, staring at the horizon. He talks to me then, softly, as if I'm sitting right beside him. "Hey, Mom," he says. "I planted daisies for you today." And I whisper back through the wind, "I know, sweetheart." I saw them. He smiles, not sadly, not regretfully, but peacefully. And for a moment, I feel the warmth of his heart again. The same warmth I held when he was a little boy asleep in my arms. Maybe he left me once. Maybe he forgot me for a while. But love doesn't die in silence. It waits, patiently, until the heart finds its way home again. And he did. My boy came home, even if it took a little longer than I hoped. That's all that matters, because a mother never stops waiting, not even after the waiting ends.